even the way that you sort of treat yourself when it comes to work. So you post, I know I saw this on your Instagram as well, but you just said there about how you had a bit of a tough week last week, and you just went, I'm going to give myself a break. I'm not going to push myself to do the extras, and I'm not going to feel guilty about it. And I think that's something that I've also learned this year is like, if you need a break, just take it. If you push yourself too hard, you just burn out. I mean, I definitely did that in the first lockdown. I was like, right, I can't be out photographing people, so I need to start a podcast, redo my website, do this, do that. And I drove myself, like, I was absolutely shattered by the end of it. So I think...
Yeah, I think the other thing, like, I kind of went back to just illustrating for the sake of illustrating, and not, I think, after Mia was born, I was like, oh, I have to design Christmas cards because it'll be like, before I know it, it'll be Christmas. I need to have Christmas cards. And I like started doing that, and it just, the last couple of weeks, I've gone and been like, well, actually, you know, I'll just illustrate whatever I feel like illustrating. It doesn't need to be anything. And then I got a commission through last week when I was having like a rubbish week, and I was having like a especially hard day. And then later on in the day, I was like, oh, actually, like, I was doing something earlier and it made me really happy, but I can't really remember what it was. And then I was thinking like, oh, what? I was working on this commission. I was just sketching, and, you know, it wasn't, even though I was creating something because someone asked me, I was actually in my happy place. And I was like, oh, this is why I started it. So I need to have more of that hopefully next year.
Emily's point about the creating just for the sake of creating and just for the love of it and the enjoyment of it, that really rings true to me, and probably to any of you who are creatives as well. I think so many of us dream about actually making a living off doing what it is that we love doing, and I know for me, I wasn't even sure that that was possible, and then it did become possible, and I you know, I still feel so lucky about that pretty much every day. But what happens is you work so hard at your craft. You want to improve, you want to gain experience, you obviously want to bring work in the door as well, that sometimes you forget to just let yourself do what it is you do, whether that's illustrating or taking photos or painting or sculpting or whatever it is that you make, you know, designing if you're more into the digital side of it. To just allow yourself the time to do projects that are just for you. I will be the first to admit that I am absolutely rubbish at that. I definitely do not take my own advice in that regard, but that is something that I'm really trying to be a little bit better at. During the first lockdown, I was quite good at pulling out my camera and just documenting life as it was at that time. Lots of stuff just around the house, out and about with Charlotte, you know, going out on a walk with the dog into the city centre and taking photos of how quiet it was. So I did really enjoy that, and I hope to bring some of that into the new year as well on a personal level. Another thing that I think a lot of creatives have found challenging during lockdown is the limitations on collaboration. So obviously this episode is a huge collaboration with loads of other creative people and small business owners all over the country. But if you are used to being able to meet with people face-to-face, to work with them face-to-face, it can be quite a challenge to all of a sudden be doing it through a screen or with a lot of distance between you. My next guest, April, speaks a lot about how challenging that was for her, especially as this was really her first full year in business. And April is a textile designer. Her business is called Agate and Air, and she will talk to us all about the challenges of working as a creative from your very own space solo. So for a lot of us who have been in business for some time now, I think 2020 was obviously a big change from what we were used to, but there's quite a few people who either were just starting out with their businesses, who maybe their business was in a stage of development in 2020. And I know for you, April, that's kind of where you were at. You had been in business for a little while alongside being employed in another job, but 2020 was really the year that you decided to take a look at your brand and really develop it into something new. So tell us a bit about what it was like to do that during a pandemic.
So obviously it was a really, really strange time, both from a personal point of view and with being in business. But I think the worst thing for me and the strangest thing for me was, as a creative, not being able to have like another creative in front of me to bounce ideas off of. So I sometimes think something is a good idea, and especially when I was at uni, we sort of had like an open plan studio, so you could literally just go to your neighbor and show them a piece of fabric in person and be like, do you think that this is a good idea? Something that I do a lot as a digital printer is, when I work with a new supplier, I will order like 5 variations of the same print, with a different color balance or more vibrancy and things like that. And it just killed me not being able to show it to somebody and be like, I see things differently from you, so we need to decide between the two of us, like which one of these prints is the one I should go for. So I think that being somebody that works as the sort of visual creative, that was the biggest hurdle that I faced starting my brand during the pandemic. But it is actually quite an exciting time, and some might say that it was a good time to start an online business. Primarily, I mean, obviously I would love to be able to go to craft fairs and things like that and show my work, but with somebody with a background in photography, like I love being able to completely showcase my brand online. And I did a wee Christmas market that I was part of, just a virtual one, at the end of last year, and the person that organized the event said that there's no way we would have gotten this much traffic if it was just business as usual. So I think there are opportunities within this horrible thing that has happened, and I think the thing that's been the sort of driving point for me, and I guess the most important thing, is to be like stay positive throughout this entire experience. It has been odd, I'm not gonna lie, but I'm kind of in an advantaged position because, as you say, I only really started growing my business last year, so I've not known anything other than this. I can't sit here and compare what my income was pre-pandemic to what it is now, because I'm running an entirely different setup. I'm starting a new business, so I'm kind of advantaged in that way, that I've not had that experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Like, I always think, oh, like, what a year to kind of really start out in business, because everything's been so much more challenging. You've had to adapt so much more quickly. Like, it's such a different experience. But I guess, as you say for yourself, you don't know any different. This is you just starting out. So, in that way, it's maybe quite a positive thing.
Yeah, and I mean, with what happened last year, basically, without going into like too much detail, I got made redundant, and that meant that I was also in a position to be getting more help from places like Jobs and Business Glasgow, like People Plus, like from the job centre and things like that. So a lot of courses that I did, it was actually a bigger benefit to me than being online, because it meant I didn't need to go anywhere. I wasn't wasting heaps of time that I could be spending like sitting in the studio or whatever, going out to these meetings and signing in at the job centre and things like that. So what I would usually do is I would sit on a webinar and have my laptop set up, but I'd also maybe be sewing at the same time, or um, it's not that I wasn't paying attention, it's just that I'm at the point now where I could probably make a scrunchie with my eyes closed because I've made so many. So I was able to do 2 things at once, and it has meant that my productivity levels are probably better than what they would have been trying to do something like this outside of the pandemic. So there's definitely been good and bad points to everything. I mean, it'll be interesting to see, I think, in 2021, hopefully as we get towards the later half of the year, we can start going to craft markets in person again. And I think what's amazing about the small business community, especially like my experience with it in Glasgow, is everyone's been so supportive of each other online. People that have been organising the virtual markets and stuff have done an absolutely incredible job. There's so many networking virtual events between small businesses as well. I'm actually really looking forward to meeting some of these people for the first time. So it'll be quite interesting later in the year to like basically having been each other's hype women on Instagram for the past 6 months to like get to the point where you can sell together in person and see people's work in person, whereas before like you'd only be looking at it on the screen. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Should be good.
That is yet another good point about meeting people in person for the first time. I think for a lot of us, we have found a community online. I mean, if you were already using social media to build up a community, you probably had an existing one already, but with no option to meet people in person, go to networking events in person, all of a sudden everything was online. And if you weren't doing it, then it really wasn't happening at all. So I know for me, I've always vastly preferred meeting people in person. I'm an extrovert, I get my energy off other people, and I really love meeting new people and just going for a walk and a chat, or having a chat over a nice coffee and cake. Always good to have an excuse for that. But having said that, I'm so thankful for technology, because I would, pick having a screen over nothing any day. I think most of us would. And while it was a little bit of an adjustment, I was quite worried that it was going to be super weird talking to people over Zoom and doing networking events over Zoom. It was actually fine, and I think I'm used to it enough now that even when things go back to normal, I may still participate in some of these Zoom events, because obviously it allows us to connect with people that are a little bit further out, that maybe you wouldn't take a train ride for an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours to go to a networking event. But if you can do it from the comfort of your living room and be connected with people in different places, that is a pretty cool thing. And on the subject of networking, my next guest, Lorna, started the networking event Biz Mixer just before lockdown started. I think she had only had a couple events before then, and she managed to move everything online. Hi, Lorna. How are you feeling at the end of 2020?
Oh, hi. Thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, 2020 has been a very different year, hasn't it? I think I am feeling glad to be through it, but it's been a really exciting year, actually. A lot of adaptability, but also I think we've kind of realised what's important this year as well, So yeah, I'm maybe not as stressed out as most people, because December is not a hugely busy time for me. Like, I had my busy time up to the end of November, and I've been able to chill out a little bit, and do a little bit more of that reflecting, and yeah, just kind of gearing up and really looking forward to what 2021 has to bring.
Well, that's all good. That sounds very positive. So tell us a little bit about, I guess, the reflecting that you've done back. What's one thing that you kind of feel like you're going to carry forward in your business in the new year?
So, well, I know this is probably a little bit cliche because I run a kind of networking community-based type business, but I could never have done this without the people that I've met. And it's not just this year, it's in years gone by as well. And I think even though we've all had to work from home, everybody is still wanting to connect and feel part of a community. Like, none of us are capable, well, if you are, fair enough, but I think the majority of us hate working in a silo. And that's probably one of my biggest fears for being self-employed, is not having a team of people around me. So I think that's just reinforced how important that is this year, is to have people around you to help and support with your business. They're not a team like you would have if you were part of if you were employed by somebody, but they're there to help, and that is the ethos that I'm taking into 2021. That it doesn't matter if we're all sitting at home, that technology can connect us, and just to keep that up and know how important that is, and it's just really core to a lot of people. So that is the number one thing that I am taking into 2021.
That's such a good one. And I don't think it's cliche. I think you're absolutely right. And the person that I spoke to before you today actually said something quite similar in that, you know, she said she always knew that networking was important and having a community of people was important. But this year's really driven it home because the opportunity to meet people face to face was taken away. And, you know, she was saying, like, if I didn't have these connections or have the capability to make new connections online, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I think you're right. It's been a reminder of how important it is to have that network of people and that community and audience that you feel close